Good morning, freshmen, and happy Tuesday. I'm so excited that today we get to continue learning about place value and the different things that we can do when we understand place value. Today we're going to be continuing on some of the things we learned last week about multiplying by 10, and we're actually going to multiply by powers of 10. This is going to be really important because it's going to help us when we get to Thursday and Friday this week and we start to compare digits based on their place value. Well, let's think about what happens when I multiply by 10. Let's say I want to start with 5 ones times 10. When I multiply by 10, I get 5 groups of 10 ones. So now I can regroup those 5 groups of 10 ones into 5 tens, or 50. So my place value increased by 1. What if I multiplied those 5 tens times 10? So I'm multiplying by 10 a second time. Well, then I would have 5 groups of 10 tens. And I know that 10 tens is the same as 100. So 5 tens times 10 gives me 5 hundreds, or 500. So I increased in place value one more time. What if I multiplied 5 hundredths times 10? So this is the third time that I'm multiplying by 10. Well, I would now have 5 groups of 10 hundredths, which is the same as 5 thousandths. So I have 5 hundredths times 10, and that gives me 5,000. So let's think about what happened. I started with 5, and I multiplied by 10 3 times. I know that when I multiply by 10 3 times, that's the same as multiplying by 5 times 10 to the third power. 10 to the third power is 1,000. So my answer was 5 times 1,000. That gave me 5,000. I moved over one place value every time I multiplied by 10. So I moved 1, 2, 3 place values. Let's think about what happens if I multiply a decimal by a power of 10. And let's look at the example 4 tenths times 1,000. If I'm multiplying times 1,000, I know that 1,000 is the same as 10 to the third power, 3 tens multiplied together. So if I'm multiplying times 10 to the third power, I'm multiplying times 10, times 10, times 10. What happens each time I multiply by 10? Place value increases once each time I multiply by 10. Let's take a look and see. When I multiply by my first 10, I now have 4 groups of 10 tenths, which is the same as 4 ones. When I multiply by my second 10, I now have 4 groups of 10 ones, which is the same as 4 tens. And when I multiply by 10 a third time, I now have 4 groups of 10 tens. So I have 4 hundredths. When I multiplied 4 tenths times 10 to the third power, I moved over 1, 2, 3 place values. And my answer is now 400. Let's take a look at how that might look if I was going to solve that math problem on my paper. So write example 1 on the left side of your notes, and on the right side leave some room to work it out. 24 times 10 to the second power. I'm going to start by drawing my numbers into a place value chart. So I've got my ones, my tens, my hundreds, my thousands, my 10,000s, and my 100,000s. Now, if I'm multiplying 24 times 10 to the second power, that's the same as saying I'm multiplying 24 times 10 twice. So I'm going to move over 1, 2 place values. I multiply by 10, then I multiply by 10 again. My 2 is now in my thousands place. Do the same thing with our 4 ones. Now I've got 4 tens. Now I've got 4 hundredths. I move over 2 place values. I know that if I just leave 24, the value hasn't changed. So I've got to fill zeros in my tens and my ones place. So my answer is 2,400. 24 times 10 to the second power equals 2,400. Now, what if I multiplied 24 times 10 to the third power, or times 10 to the fourth power? Well, If I multiply times 10 to the third power, I'd be multiplying times 10, times 10, times 10. So I know that I've already moved over 2 place values. I would just need to go one more. Fill in my zeros in my whole number place values. 24 times 10 to the third power is 24,000. What about 24 times 10 to the fourth power? This time I'm multiplying times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10. 24 times 10 to the fourth power means that I need to move my 24 4 place values. It's going to increase in place value 4 times. So I've already moved 3 times. I'm going to move 1 more time. Fill in my zeros, and I have 240,000. So every time I multiply by a power of 10, I can break it down into the number of times I'm multiplying by 10, and that shows me how many times I'm going to increase place value. Let's look at one more example. In this example, I'm asked, what would happen if I multiplied 13 and 42 hundredths times 10,000? Let's start by writing our number into a place value chart. 13 and 42 hundredths. I know that my 3 is in the ones place, which means 4 is in the tenths, and 2 is in the hundredths. I know my 1 is in the tens place. Beyond that, I've got the hundredths, the thousands, the 10,000s. And then after that, the 100,000s. When I multiply by 10,000, I'm also multiplying by a power of 10. Which power of 10 is equal to 10,000? I know that 10,000 is equal to 10 to the fourth power. So I'm multiplying times 10, times 10, times 10, times 10. Which means that I'm going to increase in place value 4 times. Let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to fill in my last 2 whole number place values. So when I multiply 13 and 42 hundredths times 10,000, I get 134,200. What about another example? And this time, I want you to try. I'm going to walk you through step by step. This example says multiply 4 and 572 thousandths times 100. First, I know I'm multiplying by a power of 10. I need to figure out which power that is, how many tens I'm multiplying by. How many times am I multiplying by 10 if I'm multiplying times 100? 100 is the same as 10 to the second power, so I'm multiplying by 10 twice. What does that mean is going to happen to the place value of each digit? The place value of each digit is going to increase twice. Let's draw a place value chart so that we can show this happening. So I've got my ones, my tenths, my hundredths, and my thousandths. I've got my ones, my tens, and my hundredths. I know each digit is going to increase in place value twice, so I'm going to show that now. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. So, my new number, make sure I put a decimal between the ones and the tenths place, is 457 and 2 tenths. Each digit has increased in place value twice because I multiplied by 10 twice. Now I want you to try another. This example says 864 times 10 to the third. Answer this question now, then we'll go over it. Let's check your work. When you did this, you multiplied 864 times 10 to the third power. That meant you multiplied by 10 3 times. So So the place value increased 3 times. So you started in your ones, tens, and hundreds place, and you moved to 1, 2, 3, the 8 in the 100,000s, 1, 2, 3, the 6 in the 10,000s, 1, 2, 3, the 4 in the thousands, and I filled in my whole number place values with zeros. 864 times 10 to the third was 864,000. You are now done working through your intro to new material for today. Please raise your hand so that a teacher can give you directions.